Welcome to another episode of Balance Your Wealth. This week, we're going to run some different finance terms by everyone's spouses, and we're going to go through the funniest answers and just kind of highlight maybe the gap that we see even inside of our own households between the knowledge on these different subjects. So don't feel bad if you feel like you're in the dark on this. As you'll see, many of our spouses are too, and we do this for a living. So the first one I'm going to address is one of our questions was, what is a MF or a mutual fund? And collectively, everyone's spouse answered MFer. So if that gives you any idea of where this conversation is going, I think it'll be a great time. So this week, I've got Nick, Sean, Nora, and Tyler joining me. And we're going to go ahead and kick it off with Nick. What did your wife say an ETF is?
Thanks, Ryan. My wife, Michaela, said an ETF is an economic trade fund. It was pretty close. The real answer being exchange traded fund. But hey, 2 out of 3 words on the acronym, not bad. And we got a lot of acronyms to go today. So this was a fun one.
Yeah, my wife went with electronic transfer function. And I think it really highlights a point that, when we meet with clients, a lot of times one spouse maybe handles most of the finances. And we always want, both people to be involved because if something does happen to someone, we want everyone to be on the same page. We want the financial plan to continue. We want the family to have success. And oftentimes, we don't necessarily practice what we preach. And I think some of these answers, we've got some homework to do in our own households.
I don't know about you guys, but I was fairly surprised on how much my husband Ken knew in terms of acronyms and some of the questions we asked. So I don't know if that is saying I'm really good at education at the home, or he may be getting some advice from his friends, his buddies on text, or the water cooler at work, which also happens a lot in households, right? You have groups of friends, especially if you get like a competitive mindset. You have people comparing results and things like that. And what's the new fancy, shiny new stock or type of asset to invest in? So I'm gearing that's a little bit more towards what my husband's learning about some of these. So that also comes in households. So I was surprised my husband got this one right, exchange traded fund. But it was interesting to learn how he kind of knew those things.
Nice.
And not counting on you, Nora, I guess, huh? Jeez. Yeah, he couldn't throw you a bone, be like, you educated me on. Yeah.
I do feel like I educate him because he always says like Bitcoin. I was like, Ken, I don't know. You and Ken would probably have a good conversation, Nick. But I know Sean and you guys, your group text, you have a lot of things to say about investing, I'm sure.
All right, next one on the list was, what is a basis point? I'm going to have to go to Nick here again first because I liked Michaela's answer. So go ahead, Nick, give it to us.
She exclaimed, she's like, I know this one, bips. She said, but I don't know what that means. I just hear you talk about basis point and bips all the time. So it's the real answer is it's the percentage usually of like an interest rate. So it's like the movement of either a fee or an interest rate, and measured in bips is a kind of easier way to do that than like fractions of a percentage.
Before I jump in here, I want to throw a disclaimer out there. Sarah, if you're watching this, I love you. You are my queen. I cherish you. I miss you. So for basis points, Sarah was actually pretty close. It made her answer made sense. So she said a baseline point in somebody's stocks, the bottom number. I'm like, okay, I can see where you came up with that. Like, that was a very valiant effort there. So that was her answer for basis point.
And Tyler, my wife's was very similar. She said it was the starting value or the bottom part, which in a lot of times basis does mean that, right? That's your cost basis. But a basis point is 1/100th of a percent. So if something is costing 35 bips, it is 0.35% as a better way to think about that. And bips is just the cool language that us finance nerds throw out there so that we can have an upper leg and confuse people when we're talking to them.
I can't stand that, by the way. I never say bips. You will never catch me saying bips ever.
You gotta be a bigger finance pro. I think that's the bottom line. Nora's throwing around bips. It works.
All right, cool. We weren't too far off on basis points. We had the general idea at heart, I think, across the board. So the next one up is, What is the SEC? So we're going to go to Nora first. Her husband Ken had a perfect answer as a college football coach, so nothing more we would expect from that.
Exactly. I knew this answer was coming from him, and technically he's not wrong. Different industry, he knows to stay in his lane. So his answer to SEC was a football conference. And so when I asked him that question, he kind of turned it on me. He goes, well, you tell me what that stands for in football. So I'm going to throw out Southeastern Conference, right? Am I right?
A little bit of Google to help you, but yeah, you nailed it, Nora.
No Google here. I don't cheat. But yeah, so he's not wrong. SEC, he said football conference.
Yeah, my wife went with the government office that monitors people with too much money, and so she's not terribly wrong there. Once you're with the SEC and you're on our side of the business, they're the people that kind of regulate us and make sure we're doing things right. And because we are doing things right, they're just a pain to us because they come in and audit us and make sure they're not doing some of the slimy things that happen in this industry, which in general is good, but for us can be a pain when we know we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, my wife went stocks economical consulting. So I think she was thinking of like, oh, what do you do? And laid it out there. I was like, good answer, honey, but completely wrong. So
Yeah, my wife said state electoral college. She's like, I don't know, it sounds like a government thing. And I was like,
She was right. Yeah.
so the real answer though is the Securities and Exchange Commission, at least in the finance world. So they're the federal governing body that specifically has jurisdiction over investment advisors like ourselves. So we are all intimately familiar with the SEC, and sounds like we've done a pretty good job sheltering our spouses from the SEC's nonsense. So back to you, Ryan.
Yep. Nice. So the next one up is going to be, what does IPO stand for? We'll go ahead and go with Lauren's answer for this one if you want to get us kicked off, Sean.
Yeah, she went with the internal program office, which I'm actually very proud. I don't want my wife to know that it stands for initial public offering, because a lot of times we get questions about those and the data on buying in at an IPO. It's a company that's private, that's going public and being going to be start to be traded on the markets, the open markets. And so that IPO is their initial price, their initial offering out to the public, which in general is an extremely volatile and historically bad place to kind of invest, but a lot of fun for people to talk about, right? So it's good water cooler talk to hear about, different companies going public, and is really exciting, but generally speaking, not the best time to buy into a company.
That's pretty good. That sounds like a department of like an AI person in the future, the processing person. I've said independent processing officer. I'm like, that is, that's similar to Lauren's answer actually.
So sounds like someone who does like the parking meters and gives you tickets if you haven't paid.
yeah, Sarah, my
Independent.
wife, she went with a little different. She went international projections occurring.
Ooh.
All right.
So interesting
Alright.
answer for sure.
Nora, I'd be interested to hear what Kenny had to say.
I'm pretty sure he probably found it from your text or another guy text, because he did say initial public offering. So
Nailed
I don't
it.
know if it's, again, my education, but he did well there.
Taking credit from him. I see what you're doing there. All right. Second to last one is going to be, what is a blue chip? So I'm just going to go ahead and toss this one up. Whichever one of you guys feels like you had a funny answer, feel free to jump in.
I was hoping I could get my wife to throw out like one of those blue corn chips, like that you dip in with the blue corn. Yeah, didn't quite trip her with that. She said, "Bruh, I don't know. Is it a Dogecoin?" Which I'm shocked that she even knows what that is. So, blue chip equals crypto related thing in her mind.
I'm sure she's heard you say Dogecoin as the resident Elon Musk stan.
Yeah, maybe that might be true. Her water cooler talk is just living in the same house as me.
I'm going to give my wife some credit here. She didn't nail it, but she said it's a stock that you could put value on, which ultimately all stocks are. But she wasn't completely wrong there. When we're talking about blue chip stocks, we're talking about high quality, large company, that we can invest in, which of course we can put value on. So I'll give her credit and say that was a win for her.
I got to throw some credit my wife's way. Sarah answered one of the best, highest stocks you can get. So she was
Mhm.
teetering on the correct answer there. So
Mhm.
good job, honey.
Yeah, Ken, I'm going to give half credit here too. He said a top football recruit. And so if you're thinking the next recruit is like an Apple or Microsoft, you're spot on, babe.
There you go.
You guys remember Blue Chips, the movie from like 25 years ago?
Mm-mm.
No,
Tyler with the
basketball. Oh,
obscure
okay.
movie reference, man.
Yeah. No. Okay, you got to go look. That's where the blue chip came about. The blue chip recruit thing. So
I'm gonna
take a
have to
look.
Google that. I'm gonna see if that's
Yeah.
really where it came about, or if the movie came about from, you know,
I,
like
I think it actually stems from like a poker reference, like way back in the day. But it's fine.
A lot of disagreement here on where blue chip came from. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our last one, which is what does BTC stand for? I'm going to go ahead and get it out of the way. I'm going to give Ken and Lauren their flowers. They both said Bitcoin, so they won at least 1 out of 7. In Ken's case, he's crushed the whole thing. He won by far. So Tyler and Nick, what did Sarah and Michaela have for what is BTC?
Yeah. Sarah had a pretty funny answer. Big trading company. Sounds like a cool company name. I'd start a company that was big trading company.
Just wealth management. We actually were just talking about a different company that had a very similar name yesterday. That was hilarious. So yeah, Michaela, I think, was still on the basis point thing. She was mad about not figuring that one out. So went with basis trajectory club. So I was like, hey, Bitcoin is kind of like a club. So I get it. There might be, a partial point there.
Yeah, I think you nerds might have been in the basis trajectory club in high school. You can be honest.
a lot of truth to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Do we want to add anything else?
Yeah. I don't know. I think just like tying it back to like what Sean said, as far as making sure we do a good job educating all clients, both spouses. And
Yeah.
these are just,
Can we
not that
give
everyone has to be fluent in every acronym, but that's okay.
Ken is obviously the winner, but I want to hear Nora rant on Ken.
I don't think you want to
Oh,
hear that.
man.
That'd be easy.
Yeah. Come on, Nora.
You
How
guys are
much
really
time is the
digging
rant
holes on
gonna
this
be?
episode.
Yeah, I don't want to start no fights here. Come on.
Roast them. Come on.
All right, great conversation, everyone. As you can see, even inside of our own households, there's some disconnect on what all these different things mean. So that's why it's very important that you're bringing your spouse into these conversations as you're having them, making sure you're on the same page. And that's something we love to do here at Balance Wealth. We like to make sure that, everyone's part of these conversations. Everyone understands what the goals are and how we're going to get there. So with that, we're going to hand the winner of the week for this episode to Ken. But since he's not here by default, we have to give it to Nora. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Nora for her 30 to 60-second rant of the week.
Thanks, Ryan. I feel like this is a participation medal. I don't want to accept it on behalf of my husband, but he did do a good job, and I'm going to take credit for that, for educating him. But it was a fun exercise. So I encourage everybody, whatever industry you're in, it was really fun to kind of hear what his answers were and then flip it on me in terms of football. You think I'd know a little bit more about football being around it so much, but it was a fun exercise. So I encourage you. So my rant, we were talking sports earlier in kids sports, and I don't know why, but practice times for my 5-year-old keep getting earlier and earlier. So I want to know, in terms of whether daycare, school, or going in half a day or things like that, was why does practice have to start so early? And then when you get older, they go so late. And so that's kind of my rant, is priorities, trying to figure out how to fit in all these kids sports. And I just feel like you put them in so much to figure out what they really enjoy, and how much is it, am I doing it, or that they really want to do it? So that's kind of my rant.
That's a good point, Nora. Lauren immediately, as a nurse, told me, "Oh, this is fun to you, huh? How about we do some medical terms?" And I threw up the mercy flag. So I'm glad she's not doing a podcast.
Awesome. Yeah. Great rant. I can imagine those early wake up calls for the soccer practice for a 5-year-old or whatever is not the best use of your time. But hey, sacrifice for them. So thanks for joining us for another week of Balance Your Wealth, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.